Everybody, we're here to chat about the family office panel discussion for DLC.
Sure. My name is Deniz Misir. I'm an entrepreneur and entrepreneur. As entrepreneurial activity, I have established V22 in 2013, and we have become the first company in Turkey to provide family office services as a trusted advisory company. And since then, we have been engaged in wealth growth, wealth excellence, wealth protection services for the high net worth clientele. And we had a lot of learnings from which we've been continuously growing. Well, that's in a nutshell. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Wendy Craft. I'm chief of staff. I run a single family office in New York City for a third generation family.
Great. I'm Manpreet Singh. I run a multifamily office based in DC on behalf of a number of public company CEOs and unicorn founders. And we do a bunch of growth equity venture, some private equity, and some real estate investing. So why don't we start off by having someone give a quick chat on describing what a family office is, so that might be helpful.
Okay, I'll jump up and then I'll flip it to you, Denise. A family office can be anything you want it to be, and none of them are similar, although they very often will have similar features. Really, they're often an entity to separate out the private affairs from a family from their business affairs, although that is not the only reason. Many times folks who started out with a business want to have those employees are also handling a lot of their private affairs. So their CFO is trying to do their personal taxes or outsource their personal taxes. Their assistant is booking air flight for the family for holiday, as well as trying to handle business affairs. And it gets very complicated, and there's quite a lack of confidentiality if you're having your business employees handle your personal affairs. So families will get to a point where they need to separate those out, where they need to start planning what things are going to look like for their children and their grandchildren, and they'll set up a family office. I've heard it said 1,000 different ways. My own personal opinion is, if you're going to hand a check for charity to your PA that is in excess of her annual salary, it's probably time to start thinking about having a family office and get those personal items out of the business place. Not every family has a personal place. Some of them are 7th, 8th, 9th. I know 14th generation families, and there aren't operating companies anymore. But a lot of people do. And when people come to me for advice and say, I want to set up a family office, often the first thing I'll say is why, because it's not always right for everybody. And I'll flip it to you, Denise.
I would say it's an investment vehicle. That's really simple as that. Occasionally used for governance as well, which is good. That shows that family is quite, a values-driven family that is going for that discussion as well. And yet, most of the family offices I've met in the space, and I know are into the deals being made, they're acting as investment companies.
Got it. Thanks for answering those questions. And I know family offices have been created, a lot of created over the last, 20 or 30 years, but there's many different types, right? There's single family offices, there's multifamily offices. I can give a quick description on the differences. Single family office is just for single family, and a multifamily office could be for many different families. And in some cases, the multifamily office might not do everything it does for maybe the one family that started it. It may do everything for single family and do all the personal things. And then for the rest of the families in the family office, it may just do investment services, or it just may do estate planning, or it may just do bill pay, right? So there's a lot of different variations of family offices out there. What other services have you seen family offices offer outside of bill pay and, taking care of your homes and your boats? Anything crazy that you guys have seen?
So for a single family office, you can have every service under the sun. They will deal with the airplanes, the yachts. They'll do the estate planning. They'll, in many cases, in-house the investment, although most family offices that I know, and I know a lot of them, tend to be more hybrid, where they'll outsource certain parts of their investments to multifamily offices if it's not within their expertise, and then keep their expertise investment, say it's a real estate family, in-house. I've seen private equity firms do in-house private equity and outsource the real estate. So it can work any way you want. Some of them that are really large, they'll have everything. They might have 400 or 500 employees. And I know several that do, and they will do everything in-house. But you're going to have legacy planning. You're going to be taking care of the generations as you get more and more clients within the single family. And I think you almost probably see that more in the multifamily. You're going to have, client households that you visit to provide services for. And there's usually a client services agreement about what services you provide. And you'll see that in large single family offices as well as multifamily offices. You might be ordering the plane. I call it jack of all trades. You just need to figure it out, and they can throw anything at you. And that might not be on the little list, but you're the go-to person and you have to get that done. But a lot of it is accounting, investments, legacy, estate, personal reputation issues will come into play, all kinds of things.
Why don't we talk about how we engage the next generation to be part of the family office? It doesn't make sense for the next generation to work at the family office. It doesn't make sense for them to use the family office services. How do they know what things they should be using the family office for versus not using the family office for?
Okay, I can tell a story here, which might be helpful to some people. I'm going to pick on the Todd family down in New Zealand. Forgive me if you get mad at me, the Todd family. But they have it down. I personally feel they do it better than any other family in the entire world. So what happens with them, there's about 300 plus family members, and their households are usually 3 to 4 people. The day a child is born, the family office sends out a letter and says, welcome to your family. You're part of a great family. You have a wonderful history, and we can't wait to work with you. And then every year on a child's birthday, they send that child an age-appropriate letter. Today, you're turning 5. Have you thought about helping other children and animals? And then they send a corresponding letter to the parents saying, this is a great age to provide 3 charities and divide up money and let them donate and see how that works for their family. And then at 6 or 7, they're coming in with their cousins and their second cousins in little groupings to work on something different. They're one of the very few families that stay very close together. The family office, even if executives change out and everything else, are with them every step of their lives. So it's never an issue that they haven't been there. In American families, not all, but many, the next generation is not engaged until they come into their wealth, by which time they think of the executives as mom and dad's people. And so there's naturally a barrier there to wanting to work with them. And that's why when mom and dad pass the torch, a lot of times the next gen will fire all the executives and get their own people in there. For me and my family, because I deal with the 3rd and the 4th generation, and I knew my 4th generation since they were 8 years old. They're now in their 20s. It's being a resource. It's understanding that we can't always engage them through philanthropy, which was always the go-to way to engage the next generation. 7 years ago, they said, yeah, no, we're kind of interested in digital assets. We're interested in AI. We're interested in all these really cool things, ESG and everything else. We're not interested in the Red Cross. And then that became a matter of trying to engage them in a different way. We've been pretty successful for that. I think it's a lot on the parents, how they engage them from a young age. I think it's a lot on the family office or the multifamily office, providing an opportunity for them to come in groups with other peers of that age group. And that's just my opinion.
I used to think about this question a lot, and I try to see for the companies where I worked for their next gen, where I have provided training, mentoring services, how to really, sharpen the needles so that we could really do some great work with them. Given my experience, I have come a little bit to the closer end of the next gen's point of view. And I feel that next gen feels there is the dynamism and innovation a little bit missing in the family office space. And you can really empathize with them once you're working with them and once you have had a lot of experience in the family office space. So I think we're coming more and more to the point where we look at the family office space from their point of view and not us looking, how to involve them to the office space, but can there be a middle way where we can find the innovation and dynamism that our next gen may bring to us, to the space, and can the space evolve now that a lot has changed in the space anyhow, and we cannot keep up to the traditional old school ways of doing investments business. The world is changing.
I will say to you, Manpreet, something that's come up for us, not in our particular family, but in the space at large in the last 2 or 3 years, is some families in the Midwest, et cetera, is how do you deal with a child wanting to use their trust to donate to something you're morally against? And I can't tell you, I've probably had 15 families say, hey, any advice there? Yeah, it could be anything. We'll pick on climate. Parents made their money in oil. The children want to go against big oil with their trust funds, and it becomes an issue. So I think we're all going to have to get pretty savvy pretty quick and start thinking of ways to address that, because that's been coming up more and more.
Yeah, of course. And I guess in terms of how to engage with the family office, I'm sure some people have questions. How do you find them? I think that's kind of difficult, right? They're not really, many don't have websites. There's not much information out there about them. What is the best way to try to get in front of family offices if there are people out there who have compelling opportunities that we should be looking at?
Really takes a lot of time actually mingling with family office friends, getting to know them. So being on the market, being in the field is the quickest way in my experience. Having shared that, more and more family office institutional knowledge is becoming more visible in the space. There are lots of tools now which our friends can check on the net, and that can allow them a closer reach to.
For me, I've gone to a lot of conferences. My family principal enjoys them. I usually have to escort, and I've just met people over the years and stayed in touch with them, and they'll introduce you to friends, and they have friends, and you can publish, you can educate, be a resource. I think if you're a resource for families, a lot of people I found on the sell side, let's say they're selling, I'll pick on something, PE. And they'll come up to you and they'll say, well, does your family office do PE? And if the answer is no, they just leave. And that to me is a lost opportunity and absolutely ridiculous. You can easily say, yes, our investment firm does PE, but I may be somewhere else in 5 years. Or, you know what, one of the people in our firm is actually an orthopedic surgeon. There are 100 ways you can be helpful. And if you go in with, I want to be helpful to you, as opposed to, I just want to sell you, I think you will make a lot of relationships that you can take with you for life, and meet more and more people, because people will have an incredibly positive image of you, as opposed to that's just the guy that sells PE.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea. I think, for me, this is definitely a new space for me. I've only been in the family office space for 3 or 4 years, and part of that was during COVID. I've attended a lot of these online Zoom conferences and started to attend some in-person conferences. But I think it seems like getting to know the right people can be relatively easy if you could be selling, but even if you're selling, you just try to offer additional value instead of just selling your individual product you're trying to get them in front of, right? And so, we've done I think, a really good job of just talking to people and seeing how we can be helpful. I think I don't think I'm an expert or we're experts in anything, but we tend to know a lot of people, and it's surprising to me how many family offices just don't have the right network or the right connections to find the right real estate opportunity, or find the right PE opportunity, or know the right venture guys out there. And if you can really add that value, if you have that kind of network, if you make those proper introductions for those families and get them in front of the gaming fund that they want to invest in, down the road, they'll probably talk to you and they'll help you, and maybe they'll connect you with somebody who wants to invest in PE, right? And so I think it's definitely possible. and it's definitely worth don't think it's an impossible task for sure. Why don't we touch upon a couple of challenges with family offices? Like what have you seen the biggest challenges be outside of, I guess family generational fighting, or might be any other like pitfalls and concerns or issues you've seen within family offices?
Most families don't jump with joy when you tell them it's time to review their estates and trusts. They get very busy. They need to go on vacation. They just have no time for it. So I think that's always challenging. I think there's a generational challenge. By and large, the generation in control is going to want to know what the generation beneath them is up to. And you really have to figure out how to navigate with EQ, emotional intelligence, giving some privacy and confidentiality to that next gen group, or they won't come to you with anything, and you will never surpass that. You will never be able to give them good advice if they think every word they're saying is going back to the parents. So I think that's a discussion that you really have to sit down and talk to the generation in control and say, what are we able to keep private? What do we have to come to you with? And that's always been one of the tougher things to get by.
I'm going to touch a little bit upon this as well. I think one of the challenges, actually, I think for me as an entrepreneur, I was pitching family offices for a company I started many years ago. It's kind of unclear, like, speed to making a decision is important. I think some family offices do a really poor job of that. And so I think if you are getting pitched about an idea and you are speaking to an entrepreneur, try to get back to the entrepreneur in a reasonable time. I think VCs are also notoriously bad in some cases. But I think maybe giving more feedback to the entrepreneur why something didn't work out is probably the most important outside of just, hey, the boss is too busy on his yacht and doesn't have time to think about this. Because there are a lot of times where I think the entrepreneur puts in a lot of time and effort and, does 10 things or answers 50 questions and just doesn't get any real feedback back. So I think that is because I think longer term, you as a family office want to have a good reputation in the entrepreneur community and people talk. And so it's good to kind of treat the entrepreneur as best as you can.
I will counter that by saying that in many cases, I will be on stage where people from the sell side, the entrepreneur side, will say families need to invest and families need to they don't, right? If your family is 700 years old, you probably have all your investments and you don't really need to do anything. And I will often tell entrepreneurs that if you're going to go into the family office space, it's a much longer timeline to get a yes or no than you would from a teachers association or a pension fund. The good about that is when things go a little sour in the market, the pension fund will leave you. If the family likes you, they won't leave you just because you're having a bad quarter or two. And in fact, they'll bring their friends along if they think you're loyal and ethical and everything else. So there's pros and cons with both, but by and large, families will take a much longer horizon. I will tell you by statistic, families generally see about 500 deals per year. They usually invest in anywhere from 2 to 4. So that's the competition that you're going against and digging through. And as opposed to having a whole team of accountants and investment professionals like a pension fund might have, they usually have a CIO who's trying to wade through all of those deals. And it's frustrating. And you got to be in it for the long haul. And patience has to be your virtue because it can get really frustrating. But again, the rewards are if it's 2008 and something bad happens, they're not going to jump ship as quick as some of the other institutional money might.
We've seen very well-known VCs and other investment firms walk away from companies, and we're kind of the one that's left kind of holding the bag and helping the entrepreneur. And it blows my mind that we're the ones that are helping when these guys have multi-billion-dollar funds and all the connections in the world. And how are we the ones that are left helping them? And they have a lot more money invested than we do in the company, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, we end up adding more value than a lot of times those guys do, which is crazy.
And that's the add-on value where you being nice and kind and helpful, they'll come to you about a bunch of stuff, but also it benefits you economically because they'll invest with you because they know your character.
Yeah. I mean, the best deals that we've found have come from other entrepreneurs that we've invested in, right? So I think being super nice and playing nice to that entrepreneur is important.
My experience is there are few structural problems in the space, and not specifically related to it being the family office vehicle. One structural problem is the language is too sophisticated, and we need to simplify it. At the end of the day, as you look into deals or as you look into different asset classes, and now the new asset versions like the digital assets and others, the language comes far too complicated for any entrepreneur or for any other party on the other side to understand. So that one, the first point I would get across is that we need to simplify the language. And second, the family office space culture is more or less like there's a lot of discussion of entitled brats versus contributing leaders and on ESG and others. And yet, when it comes to making real deals, the culture breeds still somewhat intransparency and closeness. Private deals make more money, and that breeds intransparency at the end of the day. And that is something we need to shift going forward. And the third challenge in my eyes is that there is still a little bit of old school language in the family office space, where we look into wealth and wealth performance and asset allocation and how the asset allocation is made, and then deal sourcing and how well the deals are made. And yet, it's a world within itself. It doesn't connect to the other parts of the world, like entrepreneurs and others, in a way that it could. Allow me to share, I have a hypothesis, and my hypothesis is that the elements of business and spheres of business are not harmonized. And elements of business are like capital for water, opportunity for soil, connection for fire, discernment for ether, and one I have forgotten now, data for air. And spheres of business are digital, physical, and biological spheres of business. No one in the investment world is now looking into how to harmonize. And the family office space is the only party that could have this higher holistic and strategic point of view. But we don't have that as a tradition or as a perspective yet in the space. So that's why I say we need to innovate together with NextGen going forward. If we really want the global family office space to be more influential as we are building new startups that are really creating real value.
Next thing I wanted to kind of touch upon was, what are some of your favorite events and conferences that people attend in the family office world? I know one that I typically attend is the Milken Conference. I don't know if that's one you guys have attended, but that's one that I go to. It's gotten kind of big and crazy for the LA one, but I attended some of the smaller events that they put together throughout the year.
I think it's a bit of a minefield since this is going to be recorded and put up everywhere to say you like one better than the not, because you might not be, as a family office, you're usually invited to speak at them. So you wouldn't want to be favorites on anyone. But I will say, yes, Milken is great. SALT is also good. Some of the conferences have one-on-one meetings. So for people on the sell side that excel on those one-on-one meetings, you're looking at probably Context, iConnections, Marcus Evans, SALT, and a few others. For those that really are more engaged in a panel discussion and just want to meet people, that's socially easier way for them. I mean, you have Opal, which Rhode Island, Newport in July is probably 1,200 people. It's one of the biggest. You have Du Bois, you have DC Finance. Again, you have market groups, Opal Connect, Retosa. You have, if you're in Australia or near Australia, you have PWN, which is Richard Malloy's group, and that's a very active group, one of the biggest for Australia, and they've been around for like 20 years. So there's those, and then you have like half conferences, and half conferences are more like dinner clubs with investors, and the Table Club is one of those. And I could I do a list of the conferences. No, I'm not sharing it, but there's hundreds of them. There's literally like 50 different groups doing family office conferences.
And in terms of the growth of family offices, what part of the world have you seen the biggest growth of family offices? Are you seeing a lot of growth in Asia and the US or Europe or?
I see quite a bit of growth in US that happened during COVID because the wealth was raised. And so then a lot of families started forming them. So I kind of judge it by the recruiters. And if the recruiters are quiet, not much is going on. And if everybody's calling saying, do you know anybody? I have 10 searches, it's getting very busy. It's been very busy here. My understanding is it's been very busy down in South America. I've seen from some of the international job sites, because they send us their monthly job listings, there's been quite a bit of action in Dubai and in London.
And what have you seen in terms of retaining talent in family offices? What has been the most successful to make sure the right people stay and don't leave and bounce around?
So that is a real personality match, and I can't say it any other way. So some of the recruiters do a very good job of kind of getting to know not the candidates, but the family to see how you work with them. And then they kind of filter the candidates to make sure that's two people they can work together. I always say it's easy to have the skill set. It's not easy to have the EQ set to be able to work with the family. And I'll give you an example. If you're working for a family member who prefers 2-page memos when they ask you about something and you write in bullet points, that's going to annoy them. It sounds like a little thing, but eventually they're going to be so annoyed that they can't stand it. And vice versa. If you're writing all these pages when they ask you and they just want 6 bullet points, they're going to be annoyed. So can you match their style? They may want you to handle things so they can go on a yacht trip for 3 weeks and not be bothered. Or they might want to make the final decision on everything. You just have to know them and you have to be adaptable. And where a recruiter's involved, and they're not always, they need to match those personalities so that everybody's happy. It's not easy to sell your house and move 6 hours by air somewhere else and buy a house and not have friends, and then it doesn't work out. So it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important. I've heard of some family offices giving like equity in every investment they make to their CIOs and so forth. They're letting their CIOs and their families invest across the deals that the families end up investing in. I think those are all good ideas to get those guys to kind of stick around and work for the family for a very long time.
I think, what I've seen now, let's throw my 2 cents here, especially first-gen family offices are very entrepreneurial. So they're thinking in terms of corporate dollars. And so a family office, even though they will do investments which increase the family's wealth, they're basically a big money pit, right? They're a cost center. And they really would like that A-level CIO from Goldman Sachs that's going to cost them $2 million, and they're not going to pay it. They really want to pay $700,000, and they're going to maybe get a C-level CIO for $700,000. Yes, the hours are better, but it is lower pay. So the equity investing is great. Letting employees borrow the plane or the resort, wherever it is, those are all nice. But it really comes down to there's a shortage of talent in the family office space because we, as yet, do not have a degree in family office anywhere. There's a couple certificates. There's no master's degree. There's no bachelor's degree. So it's really on-the-job training. And to get the high-end talent, you're just going to have to pay. And if you don't, you might not get the right person for you or the right skill set or somebody who has that Rolodex where they can solve every problem because they know other people in the field. So pay them. That's the best way to retain them. And then if you can offer other things that make their lives easier and help them grow their own wealth, certainly they'll stick with it.
You mentioned touching upon there's no certificates or education. Are there any courses or week-long seminars or things you can attend that you've heard of that are good? I've heard of the Harvard, puts together like a family office kind of event, or I think Wharton might do the same thing. Is there anything that you've heard that's been good or you've attended that folks think about going to?
Yeah, I joined a couple as I was new to the industry a couple of years back. And one of the first I had joined was the master class from Big Day. It was at Oxford and it was a good one. Really, I would fully recommend that, but it was by invitation only at the time. It was one of the top trainings I got. I also was in Los Angeles, Wendy, for Richard Wilson's family office certificate. I learned a lot there too. So these two I've completed. I don't know if there are some more, Wendy. Do we have some more in the space?
There's some. And some have, and I'm not going to mention them by name, but some have a agenda other than teaching you family office. And that is why you often see it restricted to family principals or their executives only, because really what they're trying to do is get endowments, right? There are a couple, Kirby Rossbach in the space has Talmud. And while they do some other things, they do have online courses where you can educate yourself. We have been pushing in the space, a group of senior people along with me, with different universities like Stearns, Princeton, Yale, trying to get a master's degree in family office that would be 1/3 law, 1/3 MBA kind of classes, business classes, and 1/3 psychology to comprise an actual certified master's degree in family office. And then have some elective classes taught by senior people in the space where they could come in and really teach you how to navigate a family and things that you will see in a family. As yet, we do not have that. Anything is better than nothing, but I'll say this to you. Would you hire an accountant who didn't have a degree in accounting, who hadn't taken an accounting board, but said, I do this all the time, I'm really good at it?
I'm curious to see what the educational organizations do over the coming years to kind of see how it plays out. I know I've been invited to speak at some of these universities and talk about, family offices, because I think they do want to educate the next generation on family offices.
They do, but we need to move that from educating possible endowments to, hey, look, we have a degree. That's what we really need in the space so much.
Do you feel like it's common for a lot of the family office professionals to have like a CFA or have like obviously an MBA or JD? Are these common things to have, or is it nice to have but not a must-have?
Not the CFA, unless it's a very large family office. JD, MBA, they do like, but you will also find family offices where they took their number one person at their operating company and made them head of family office with no knowledge of what one even was. So it's still kind of the Wild West in our industry. At least I think so. Denise, what do you think?
I think likewise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see it everywhere. It could be a childhood best friend that runs their family office, right? Who knows how that person gets picked. What are some of your favorite podcasts that you guys listen to? Is there anything that you think that family offices, or I guess in general investing, people should listen to?
There's nothing particular I listen to. I typically, if one of my friends is doing something, I will listen to what they're doing. But the heads of family office, we don't have a formal network. We have a very informal network, but I can call them all. I see them, especially in New York, because we have so many family offices. I see them a lot. We're constantly talking about, where are you investing? What are you seeing? How are you guys handling this? Do you do a prenup, or are you doing a cash settlement on marriage? Have you set up your own private trust company or not? And we talk constantly. And New York's a great place for family office because we have several thousand here, either direct or satellite. So, we talk all the time. It's like a live podcast.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially as I'm on the road and as we are looking into new ways of developing our businesses in the space. And some of the ones I really find quite interesting from investment point of view. One of the ones I'd really share is In Depth. They're a good startup builders group. I would really recommend our people to have a look. CC podcast is my second best. It's really worthwhile to have a look. And my third is the NFX podcast. I could share lots more, but these three are found the most valuable to date.
Great. Yeah. And some of the ones that I like are the All In podcasts and Patrick O'Shaughnessy's. And that's like the best, or a couple that I listen to. How often do you guys co-invest with other family offices? Is it 50% of the time, 75% of the time where you like to have at least one of their family office invest with you? Or are you guys mostly looking at deals on your own?
Sure. So our family is a very well-known real estate family. And in New York, you don't buy buildings by yourself. So even Larry Silverstein does not buy a building by himself. World Trade Center, there's always groups of investors. You're always co-investing. We also see families where they want to invest outside their core expertise. And when they do that, they almost always prefer to co-invest with another family. We don't know how to invest in music. Is there a music family? We don't know how to invest in film. Is there a film family? That kind of thing.
Yeah, we do the same on our side. We're always looking to get buy-in from at least 2 to 5 other families that are experts in that space before we consider investing. It'll be very hard for us to invest something without that buy-in.
PricewaterhouseCoopers has made a study about family office space in 2021, and according to their findings, solo deals has increased 2 times, only double, whereas club deals has increased 25 times. So more or less the main message of the report, and I looked into which kind of deals companies, family offices have been collaboratively investing. I'll share that too. It's healthcare and biotech, and second it's computer electronics and optical products, and not so much retail and consumer goods anymore. But in these 2 initial ones that I shared, on top of real estate, of course, it's mainly club deals. So you have a point. Co-investments is increasing tremendously.
Okay. Why don't we go into some of the offerings that you guys have that we can talk about what services we have that we can help other family offices with?
I just run a family office, so it's a single family office, so it just manages its own wealth. But Denise, up to you.
We are working on our offering. We are really working quite intensively on our offering with some esteemed trusted friends like Wendy, also time to time in the space. And that offering is going to be what new can we bring to the table. It's all about it. We want to innovate the space. We find it super old school. And we want to shift it up. We want to accelerate the level of performance and efficiency of the family offices and how they deal with creating a more just world, right? So some of the tools we've been looking into is like investor opportunity market fit, curated search, as it's very difficult to do search, and some playbooks for entrepreneurs or investors. So if you guys are interested in such tools, or you want to check with us what we can best build going forward, be in touch with us. In the meanwhile, our communication channel is family offices Instagram. It's kind of a hybrid Instagram, and yet it's so very easy to be in touch with us through that channel.
And then with us and capital partners, we do tend to do a lot of investments and have other families co-invest with us in some of those opportunities. So we do tend to do a lot of fintech and e-commerce and software and a lot of roll-ups. We love roll-ups. We've done a lot in the opportunity zone space as well, not on the real estate side, but more on the operating business side. Great. I think we're all out of time now, and I appreciate Wendy and Denise's time today, and look forward to meeting and connecting in person at the coming conferences and events this year.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And Denise, it was such a pleasure to see you again.
Same here, Wendy. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person soon.